Hey guys, Alex with Function Factory Performance here. Today we're going to be going over the 2015 to 2017 Ford Mustang GT500 front end conversion. On this car, we're going to be getting this bumper pulled off, getting the lights removed, and then putting them in the bumper that we already have assembled. But when you see this video, it should all be in chronological order through the bumper assembly and all of that. So without further ado, I'm going to get going on this. So we've got our car racked up on the lift. I'm going to go ahead and start by disassembling the top of the bumper, then we'll get it up, remove the under trays and the wheel well liners. But just to start off, you're going to need a trim tool, and I'm going to be removing these 8 plastic clips covering the radiator and all that with this beauty cover. These are very straightforward. Just pop them up and then get back underneath and you can pull them out. Nothing to it. Reinstall would be the same thing. You'll put it through the hole and then press the plunger down, which expands this and keeps it from popping out. You can just work your way around these nicely. All right. Next step is going to be removing these screws from the top of the bumper right here. On the top of this, we've got 6 8mm bolts and 2 5.5mm screws. The 5.5mm screws will be right here in the corners, hidden under the rubber trim. Make sure not to miss these, or you'll be trying to remove the bumper and you'll rip it off. This vehicle that we're working on today already has them removed, so I won't be able to replace those, but if you've never removed your bumper before, those will be there. Next step, after we've removed this, we're going to get the car lifted up. I'm going to remove the wheels, and then I'll go over removing the fender liners and under trays with you. We are underneath the car going to drop this under panel from the front. Basically, this has 6 of these little plastic push clips, 3 on each side, and then we've got 16 7mm screws that basically surround the perimeter of your front lip. And then there's 4 of them back here supporting the rear of the tray. We'll shoot a little B-roll of getting this dropped, but nothing too complicated. So I've lowered the car just a little bit. We're going to be removing the fender liners. These are all push clips. There's 11 of them. The only thing to note is that some of them are larger than others. I believe it's these ones by the skirt that are the large ones. So you want to keep track of those as you remove them. And then if you don't have your under tray removed yet and you decided to do your liners first, there's the 2 that connect to the under tray that you'd be removing now versus later. So anyway, we'll get going on that. Forgot to mention this one because I forgot it myself. There's one hidden clip on the frame rail, so that'll make it 12 to remove. So this portion on this particular car we have right here is a little different. On your OE car, there's a tiny screw retaining the bumper right here. It's easy to miss. This will be very tight if you don't remove it, and then you'll yank on it and it'll end up ripping the bumper where that loop is. This car already had the tabs fail, and they've installed quick latches on the vehicle. So I won't be able to show you that, but it's very simple. You remove this one screw in the back, and then you'll just pull this firmly straight outwards, and you'll be able to pop the bumper loose on the top. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Just want to make sure we don't miss that. Final step before we go ahead and drop this bumper, you're going to need to unhook your turn signal and fogs. There's 3 plugs on the back of this. These may vary depending on the trim of your Mustang. What it's equipped with. It's possible that it might not have fogs or something of the sort. So yours may vary a little bit from this. We've got our car down to working height. I'm going to go ahead and make sure these are both unhooked. And then gently we'll lift it off of these tabs on the top screws. Once you make sure all those are off, just pull it straight out. Go ahead and throw it on our body stand right here. So we're here with our bumper off. The next step we're going to do is remove this fog light housing because we need to get our turn signals out to retrofit into the new bumper. There are 6 7mm screws holding the housing into the bumper. We don't need to remove every screw because these 3 hold the fog light into the housing, which we'll take off once we have it out. And then there's another 3 that are holding the fog light. Sorry, if I called this a fog light, I meant the turn signal. Now that we've got all our screws off, we've got these tabs retaining the housing to the bumper. These can be a little bit of a pain, but I usually just push them in and they'll let go. There we go. There we go. All right, we've got this removed. Next step will be to remove these 3 screws holding our turn signal in that we're going to be moving to the new bumper. So I'm here finishing up on the factory bumper, removing the last few things we're going to need off of it. There's 6 little spring nuts that are on the bottom of the bumper that retain the factory under tray. So we're going to need to grab those off so that we can install them on our new bumper, as well as after this, I'm going to go ahead and remove this rubber weather stripping that seals the hood to the bumper. So we're grabbing the last few bits off of the factory bumper. I'm removing these spring clips right now. There's 6 of them along the bottom here. You can just use your trim puller to get behind the little spring portion of it. That'll let it release from the bumper. Otherwise, if you just yank on it, it'll come as well. Then we're going to move around to the front and begin removing this weather stripping. We'll need these basically at the end of the assembly of the new bumper. Just taking these out gently. This ensures that you don't have like a big panel gap to your hood or doesn't make any whistles or anything weird like that. That's everything we need off of our factory bumper. We can go ahead and set this to the side and we will go ahead with the assembly of our new GT500 style bumper. The first step to assembling the bumper is to get your side grills. You have one of these on each side. I'm just going to go over one as they're identical. Basically the light goes in from the front like so. It fits into these tabs as you can see here. And then we'll be using your OEM hardware that you removed from your factory bumper to bolt these back together. I'm going to be using some screws that I have here in the shop. They're very similar to the OE ones, but just to get this thing put together for you guys. Moving forward, we've got our side grille with our marker light assembled. We're going to go ahead and assemble this into the bumper. The main thing you're looking for right here will be these tabs surrounding the grille to engage right here on the bumper, and then we're going to use some screws to hold it in once we've got it in place. 4 tabs that engage this right now. More tabs will go through it as we get more pieces installed to the bumper. The other thing is putting this behind the tab right here, and we'll go ahead and put a bolt through this shortly. We're going to move on to attaching the grille to the bumper. We're going to use 2 of these coarse threaded screws, and then we're going to use one of the smaller bolts and nuts to attach to the side tab. So I'll get started with these screws first. You're going to need a Phillips and an 8mm. The 2 Phillips like coarse threaded screws are going to go in the 2 top corners of the light housing. There's one right there and one up here. Then we're going to go ahead and put our bolt and nut on this upper tab right here. We're basically emulating this section that's already assembled. I'm going to go ahead and put the nut on the back, tighten this up with a screwdriver. Then I'll grab the wrench and we'll snug it down. That's the gist of it for this grill. We'll go ahead and flip it over and put the upper surround for the light on. We've got our bumper flipped over. You've got your right and left marker light trims. These go in with the clips. I'm going to go ahead and get it popped in place. These tabs are going to be engaging the grill, so that's why that needs to be put in first. The next step is going to be putting in this lower valence. I don't know what to call these. Lower trim piece. I'm going to go ahead and stick it in place from the front and then go ahead and make sure all my tabs are engaged from the back. All right, we've got that started. I'm going to roll this over. Make sure we've got all our tabs in place. Working our way down, and then you're going to want to make sure that the two little dowels at the end fit into the end of the Canard. Next step is going to be grabbing one of our larger coarse threaded screws. That's going to go right here in the corner. This just makes sure that nothing can fall back apart once you're fully assembled. And that completes this section. Give that a look. All right. Moving on, we're going to be putting in our lower grille. That's the smaller of the two that you're provided with. This one is fully secured by clips, so I make sure that all of these are lined up prior to pushing it down, and then go ahead and work my way from one side to the other, making sure all our clips are engaged. This is going to have some unused holes in it because these are going to hold in the center garnish once we clip that in, which is basically the last step of the bumper assembly. Give that a look from the front. Moving on, we've got our upper grille. This one is going to attach with the clips, and then we'll have our air dam, whatever you want to call it, cooling panel. I think that's the correct term. That's going to mount to the back of this once this is fully installed. Cooling panel will lay over the back. It slots over these really narrow little tabs. We just got to make sure all those line up. They're really easy to fold over if you don't get them lined up, so just kind of take your time, make sure they're all in, and then we're going to go grab 4 more of our smaller coarse threaded screws. The final step in installing the cooling panel will be to put these clips over the flat tabs. These are really straightforward to install. They go with the smooth side facing down. Basically, they're easy to slide on one way and they grab when you try to go the other way. So these just push down straight like so. You can use a pair of pliers or something to give you a hand if you're having trouble pushing these on. They're very hard to take back off, so I'm only going to be putting up one on right now since we're waiting on the car. But you'll just use the remaining 10 going around the perimeter, and that keeps this thing from being able to kind of sag in the middle while you're actually traveling at speed. Keeps everything nice and tight. Next up, we've got this little trim piece next to the headlight. This simulates the wide body look of the GT500. If you pop this in, you'll see these protrude a little bit through the bumper. So what we're going to do, we're going to take these little rubber washers and the smaller coarse thread screws. You're going to put the recessed side down. This will allow it to pull the trim piece in all the way and make sure it has a tight fit. Like so. Moving on, we've got our center trim piece. I'm basically just going to set this underneath, and then I'm going to be making sure all the clips engage from the back. These will go through both your upper and lower grille as far as the tabs. So kind of just working your way through. Looks like there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on top and 5 on the bottom. So we'll just go ahead and push these through. A little difficult. That's why I recommend doing this from the back, just so you can make sure everything's fully engaged
And there we go. We've got everything on but the lip now. We can take a look at least the one side of our bumper here that's more or less complete. And then we can move on to the lip. Getting close to completion on our bumper assembly. We're going to be moving on to the lip. This has tabs along the top that engage the bumper all along. Just like everything else, we'll just be laying this over, making sure everything lines up before we go pushing anything in. Kind of get everything lined up the whole way around. I'm going to go ahead and work my way down, pushing these tabs in. And then just to double check you've got it fitting right, we've got these holes on the bottom. These line up with the actual bumper itself. We're going to be using bolts here to put our dive planes on. There's our lip. This is almost a finished look on this guy. So now that we've got all our grills and lights and everything put in, we're going to grab those clips we pulled off our OEM bumper. These are going to go on these 6 tabs at the bottom. These retain the under tray for the car. They just push on, making sure you have the thread part on top. And then once they kind of make it into the opening, that spring will go through and hold them. Then we'll go around to the top and get our weather stripping. Just going to start at one end and work my way around. Okay, we're going to be prepping the bumper for the Canards. So on the side of the bumper right here, you'll see a little recess. That's going to accept this clip that's included in your hardware pack. You're going to put the nut on the back side like the rest. These kind of don't fit in the groove the best, but I mean, this is where they go, so kind of a little odd, but no big deal. Next step to that will be to assemble the Canard / dive plane. These use M5 screws that come in your hardware pack. It's going to need 5 of those bad boys. I've already got one of them together, but we're going to show you on the second one. Did I lie to you? It only needs 4 of these bad boys. So anyway, these are the screws. They're just a standard M5 bolt. Some earlier kits did not include these. They're nothing fancy. You could get these at your hardware store if you need to. But later kits have been revised to have the correct hardware. The Canard itself isn't threaded, so it's just using the resistance of the plastic to keep these screws in. Got our M6 bolt that's going to go into our clip that we put on. That's going to be the first one we install. Going to go ahead and get this guy started in there. Once that's in, we'll grab another one of our coarse threaded Phillips screws. All along this process, I'm kind of just pushing the Canard up. These two are slotted so that it has a little bit of up and down movement. Finally, along the bottom, we've got our 3 holes right here. These are going to use these M5 bolts and nuts. And I'm just holding the nut on the inside of these. And then we'll see as we get these under the car, your under tray actually has the clip nuts installed on it for these holes to tie into. And then these remaining holes on here are for your fender liner. Just wanted to make note, we put those 3 screws and bolts in on the side. There's 1 remaining at the front of the Canard. Same thing, we're just using a nut to back up that bolt with the Phillips on it right here. And then the remaining holes, like these ones and such, tie into the under tray. So now we've got our bumper fully assembled. We're almost ready to put it on. I need to go over a couple final things. This car has an intercooler because it is supercharged, so it's missing a little bit of the factory ducting in here. On your standard car, you'll have ducting that feeds air straight to the radiator, and it also has some ducting to feed the stock intake location. On these, you may or probably will need to trim along here with a razor blade. You can leave the hard plastic sections that feed everything, but basically there'll be like a seam where the plastic turns into rubber, and you can just trim the rubber off. When you put the new bumper on, it will mate up to that plastic, and you won't really have a gap there. So you're not really losing any cooling by trimming this. Everything will still work as designed. The other thing that we need to take care of before we put this bumper on, these fender clips. These fender clips are a little different on the new bumper. They basically, if you look right here, they have a recess right here. That allows the new bumper to have that little, I guess it's a trim piece, that gives it that like wide body look that the GT500 has. These are simply two 8mm screws, a quick little fix. Just a note, these do affect how your bumper aligns when it's all said and done. So the holes are a little oversized for these small screws to give you a little bit of adjustment. Typically, you're going to want them fairly tight against the fender up here, but if you make them too tight, you may have trouble getting the bumper in. So just make sure everything slips through on the back here. These do have some little like pilot studs. I've got these these clips that are on it, basically touching the fender. And we'll get these in there. They actually seem to align really well with the little dowels that stick through the fender. Looks like not too much to worry about there. I'm gonna go ahead and get the other side swapped, and we'll get the bumper on the car. We're gonna hang this bumper now. We've got our clips changed. We got everything prepped and ready to go. You'll start by aligning these pins on the top. These are the most critical thing to start with. Once those are on, we can go to our side here. On these guys, now you'll really be able to see this portion right here needs this recessed part. So that's why these clips must be changed. It also helps if your original clips are damaged. So these guys are going to go in here. We're going to push straight in. That's some pretty good fitment right there. We'll go ahead and get the other side clipped in, and then we'll install the bolt from the fender, and that should pull up this last little gap. Once you've got your fenders clipped, go ahead and put your screws back. So right before this screw tightens up, you'll be able to kind of pull this thing into alignment as far as being flush with the fender. Then go ahead and finish cranking it down, and you'll find that you get a pretty flush little gap right here. Any fine tuning could be done at your body shop, but these things fit flawlessly out of the box for an aftermarket part. Before we go ahead and start with our undertrays and liners, you'll want to get your turn signals plugged back in. On these bumpers, we can't reuse the fog light, so I'm going to go ahead and cable tie that up to these other ones, just so it's not hanging down in view of your grill. I know we pulled our liners after we pulled our undertray on the way out, but I'm going to do it the reverse, because putting the liners are pretty straightforward. This is the only thing that's a little bit different. Basically, these that don't have the clips need to get put underneath the clips we added to the bumper. It basically goes between the lip and the clips,
And then these, where it does have the clips, need to make it over the top of the Canard / dive plane. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these up. Basically, you're trying to make sure you make it over the sides, but under those clips in the front. So it should kind of feed into the lip of the bumper more or less. So basically what I'm using to line it up are these two clips that you can see visibly. And then I'm gonna go ahead and get two of my rear bolts started once we're like pretty close to straight. That way I can actually let go of the under tray. And then we'll get all the rest of our bolts and make our way around the under tray, getting everything connected. One note I'd like to make, the under tray is absolutely not optional. It provides a lot of the strength that the bumper needs, especially at the bottom. And then you're adding more or less real aero to the car with these canards on the side. So if you don't have these, the bumper will fold under when you drive on the freeway. It's critical that you have this under tray. If you don't have one, like you've taken it off and lost it, or maybe I've seen some people who've purchased cars used that are missing them, you will need to buy this part if you're going to be doing this conversion. Basically what the best way to do this is to find the ones that you can see, start your screws in them, and don't tighten them down. Basically, want to get every single screw started before we go ahead and tighten anything down. You can move stuff quite a bit, so I'm just getting these aligned, getting them started, and then when we're all done, we'll tighten everything down. I'm just using my extension and socket to access these since they're recessed. Once we get all 16 of our screws going, we can tighten these all down. So I've got all of the screws started all the way around the perimeter into the bumper, and then these ones that tie into the chassis underneath. I'm gonna go around by hand tightening these. I use an impact to pull them, but I like to tighten them by hand to feel if anything's cross-threading, and especially these ones that go into the chassis go into like basically a plastic type of a nut, so they're very easy to strip. Now I'm just going to make my way across the bumper, tightening all these up. So I've got our liner started. It's the same as before. I wanted to note the changes to the new bumper. We've got 3 connections that tie into the bumper. We've got this top one. These use the standard ones that came out. The middle one is also the same. It's sometimes easier to reach behind here and pull this one out a little bit so that you can get that one started, push it in, and then it'll kind of settle where it settles. This lower one uses one of the larger clips. And instead of where this liner would be in front previously, this is going to go behind, and then you'll be able to push this up to the bumper, get your clip in. It kind of bends a little bit. It's not exactly perfect, I will admit, but that does hold this thing in nice. And then you'll get your 2 larger ones that go back into the bottom of this and tie into the under tray as well. And this thing is nice and secure in here. It should be good to go after that. So we've got our under tray on, our liner's finished, everything's completed with the bumper, lights hooked up. The final step, we got to bolt this down and put our beauty cover back on. I treat this like everything else, where I get all the bolts in before I start tightening them down. These ones generally line up pretty well.
because of the locating tab or like dowels that protrude. So no gripes on this. I will probably get some B-roll of it, but I don't think I will explain it. Just throwing the beauty cover back on once we're done here. And that more or less wraps the GT500 front end install. We'll kind of give a little bit of an overview of the bumper once we get this thing back on the ground with the wheels on it. And we hope you guys are satisfied with this product.